Amber Woods speaks out on controversial Factor Malta elimination. NGOs call for investigation into Shlendi boathouse destruction. Prison sets up solidarity fund to help workers charged with involuntary homicide. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening and welcome to Lovin Daily. I'm Diacono, joined today for the first time ever by Darmanin, Demajo, who will be joining us on the Lovin Daily panel as a new host. And yesterday, the Factor Malta started to get a bit heated. The first episode of the 6-chair challenge was aired where the girls competed against each other for 6 positions in the final, and as happens every single year, it was quite controversial. And the main talking point was the elimination of Amber Woods. Amber Woods, a Maltese-American singer who performed, in my opinion, extremely well. She sang a perfect rendition of "Sober" by Demi Lovato. The Lovato was extremely emotional, but Ivan Grek, her judge, her mentor, didn't see the same way as I did and as many people did, and eliminated her. And Amber spoke out about it last night. She said, don't worry, I have plenty more planned. My musical career isn't ending here. I love music. I didn't want to replace who I had to replace, and being eliminated wasn't fun. But everything happens for a reason. So good to see her taking it, having a positive mindset. At the end of the day, it is not the end of the world. She remains an extremely good singer, and it would be quite sad to see people lost on the weight track because of one competition disappointment. Lise, did you watch X Factor last night?
I didn't watch the full show, but I watched the performances this morning online. I thought she did a beautiful job. I thought it was a beautiful song, a wonderful performance. Unfortunately, her judge did not feel the same way. But I admire her for taking it on the chin and putting it ultimately it's all part of the experience and part of the journey to stardom. I'm sure she has many great years ahead of her, so we wish her the best. And I look forward to seeing what X Factor is going to offer us next. So, yeah. So moving on to the next story. NGOs call for investigation into Shlendi boathouse destruction. So, another sad story coming out of Gozo, I'm afraid. The Coalition for Gozo, which is made up of Dinlar Telwa, Għawdex and Wirt Għawdex, have called for an investigation into how the permit was given for the latest destruction of Gozo, which was the boathouse of Shlendi. They called this the latest act of madness, and it hit international news last week with an article in The Telegraph, which called the state of play in Malta an orgy of overdevelopment. Unfortunately, Tim, we're hearing more and more of these stories weekly. It's just another in a long line of the uglification of Gozo. And as we were discussing, Gozo is a refuge for many Maltese people. It's a beautiful island, and not only is it a huge tourist destination, which is something that obviously needs to be taken into consideration, it is a place where people live, where people have their lives and their families, and ultimately we all have a right to live a peaceful and, stress-free as much as possible life in an environment where we feel comfortable and safe. And unfortunately, it's just one after the other.
Yeah. I feel sometimes that we tend to underappreciate Gozo as a nation. We take it for granted, and we don't really realize how much of a gem it is for people outside Malta. But you often see it appearing in these travel listicles of the top 8 hidden gems in the Mediterranean, in Europe, and we should protect it. I mean, there's lots of other beautiful islands in the world. Let's not close ourselves off in a bubble and think that there aren't any other places like that. And we should do our utmost to protect those. Unfortunately, it's too late for Shlendi.
And yes, hopefully this will set a precedent in the sense that the boathouse has been destroyed. The Coalition for Gozo, I wish them strength and to remain steadfast in their fight. However, the boathouse is not coming back. But hopefully this will set a precedent and maybe stop some of the other developments that are in the pipeline.
Precisely. Moving on, the prison has set up a voluntary solidarity fund for 2 wardens who have been charged with the involuntary homicide of Kimboch Nicholas Virtu and who have been suspended on half pay. So according to reports, around 400 employees are pitching in €10 a month directly from their salaries to go into this fund to help them cover the cost of being on half pay. Meanwhile, the union, the General Workers Union, is helping them pay for legal fees. Now in two minds about this, to be honest, because on the one hand there's the solidarity with your colleague, which is always heartwarming to see, no matter the circumstances, that no matter what, there's this element of brotherhood or sisterhood that you're standing by your colleagues. On the other hand, you can't forget that there's someone died in the middle, a young prisoner, Kimboch Nicholas Virtu, and even though we still don't know much about how she died, about the circumstances leading up to her death by suicide, her father gave a pretty powerful interview where he said that some wardens were humiliating her. They knew that she was suffering from mental health, and they made it worse for her intentionally. So much so that even though they knew, according to him, even though they knew she was feeling suicidal, they gave her a blanket and a pair of jogging shorts, which is, if true, is a complete no-go. You should definitely, absolutely not, as a prison guard, not give a prisoner something they can use to kill themselves if you know that especially if you know that they're feeling suicidal. So this is going to come out in court. I'm sure we'll hear more details about it soon, but one to keep our eyes on.
Unfortunately, Tim, Kim was obviously a vulnerable member of society. Besides maybe having mental health issues, she was also in prison, which means that a number of her rights were already reduced, and that kind of puts you in a vulnerable situation where you do have authoritarian figures and the powers above you, which are there to help you reform and to help you reintegrate into society with a sort of a better outlook, perhaps, and better, a reformed person rather than bullying you if the stories that we've heard are to be true. Unfortunately, hopefully the truth will come out in court and it will not be too long drawn out for everybody involved.
Yes. So what can you tell us about the
on to a nice story, Tim, a nice cheerful story for today. A Maltese boxer has raised €7,000 for children with a disability. Steve Martin, who's a local boxer, together with his partner Demis Tonna, run an organisation called Super Boxing Nights, and this weekend they held an event where the winner, Steve Martin, auctioned off his title, and he raised €7,000 for an NGO called Embrace Diversity, which has a presence in Malta, and they help children with a disability. So this is a lovely story, and Steve Martin himself said the night was epic and it meant more to him than winning a world title.
That's a very heartwarming and powerful quote, but great to see these initiatives by people of influence in society using their influence to do something net positive for the community. And finally, a Valletta shop owner, St. Joseph Kamenzuli, has been fined €3,000 by the court for sending a threatening message or comment to Repubblica President Robert Aquilina on Facebook. So what happened is that after the famous 2019 protests in Valletta, this man created a fake profile warning Robert Aquilina that he'd better not walk in Valletta alone. Robert Aquilina took it seriously. He reported straight to the police, and the police took it seriously, so much so they went to Facebook. They said, look, it's a fake profile. We want to find out who the real person is. Facebook complied. They sent the police IP addresses linked to this fake profile, and from there on it was quite easy for the police to link it to this man. And he admitted to being the person behind it, but his contest is going to appeal this sentence, which is very hefty, €2,000. But if it says anything, it is that some people seem to get comfort out of being behind the fake profile. It's it's a false comfort because the police have the means of finding out who you are. So it's a lesson as well.
Yes, and besides that, which obviously that's good to know that, you know, if you are on the receiving end of threats, there is a way to sort of track them down. But what struck me most about this story was that this shop owner was angered by the protests in Valletta, saying that they affected his business. But what I found surprising was that his anger was a bit misdirected, in my opinion, because the protests were a reaction to something that happened, and they were a reaction to bring out a better system within the island, within the country, and yet his anger was directed at the protests themselves and not what instigated the protests in the first place. So, to be honest, that was the irony of that was what struck me in that story.
Yeah, it's a very interesting observation, and sometimes it's not the first type of irony like that we've seen in
No.
related to these kind of...
There's no lack of it on the island, that's for sure.
Especially when these protests come into play.
Absolutely.
So that's it from us today. Make sure you follow lovinmalta.com for all the latest developments, and have an evening full of lovin'.